So today we are going to be learning all about capital punishment. So let's go over a brief history all about capital punishment. It wasn't a mere coincidence that all around the world people were being punished with death. It was more like it was the most simple and easy way to deal with things. Caught breaking into someone's house a couple thousand years ago? You got your head chopped off on a guillotine. You got red hair. An angry mob would show up at your door trying to burn you alive. And those are only two of some unreasonable crimes. It just really goes to show what type of things were going on back in the day. Fast forwarding now to the year of 1922, a special case in Canada. A man and a woman was being convicted of the murder of a police officer. The woman named Florence Lisandro had admitted to the murder, claiming that she was the one who did it and acted on it. The woman's way of thinking was, if I claim that I murdered him, my husband won't get hanged, and then they won't hang me either, because women don't hang. Unfortunately, she was punished and hanged soon after. Today, capital punishment comes in moderation, and in some places it doesn't come at all. One of those places being the place where we live in now, Canada. On the political spectrum, usually people on the left side, the liberals, don't really care for capital punishment. They see it as barbaric and unnecessary. This is part of the reason why capital punishment is banned in Canada. It's because Canada has been ruled by a Liberal Party for a majority of its years. The right side of things often side with capital punishment. Capitalists often don't really think very highly of criminals and murderers. They would rather not share the world or their society with them. So now let's go over some advantages of capital punishment. In China, it is a super common practice to harvest the organs from the executed individuals. These organs then go on and are used on individuals that are in the need of them. So in China, not only does capital punishment get rid of the murderers who might possibly reoffend, but they also potentially save lives. Criminal sentences should both discourage both convicted offenders from repeating their behavior and other like-minded individuals from committing the same or similar crime. The death penalty would show a very high amount of deterrence, as the thought of being punished with death is rather scary. One of the biggest problems of today's justice system is the way we treat all criminals, no matter their crimes and what they have done. If you are sent to jail, you aren't going to be sent to a different jail depending on what kind of crime you did. All the criminals, if you did murder, if you stole, if you did fraud, all end up in the same jail. Let's make up an example here to help you guys better understand it. Let's say this is Phil. Phil has been convicted for fraud and he has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Bill isn't tough or hard by any means, he just got caught up with the wrong crowd and now he's in jail for what he's done. First day at jail, he comes in, walks into a cell, and he sees this guy. Now this man is convicted for murder, rape, all sorts of things. He's not a nice guy in general. He's not going to treat Phil very nicely. Let's say after he walks into a cell, sits down for a bit, their first interactions go a little bit something like this. Hey boy, you're kind of cute. Kind of remind me some female, you know what I'm saying? Why don't you do me a favor and go pick up that book at the bottom of the floor right there? I kinda don't wanna pick up that book. And what happened after, you may wonder? Phil picked up the book. Phil picked up the book because he no longer had a say in what things he could do anymore. He no longer had a say in who he has to surround himself with, who he has to be with, is quite frankly, for all he knows, he's stuck with that guy for the rest of his sentence. But a way of avoiding this could have been, instead of sentencing his cellmate to life in prison, they could have just sentenced him to a death penalty. What I'm trying to get at this point is, once you've been labeled a criminal, nothing is different amongst you guys except for the amount of time you are sentenced to jail for. Not all who break the law are the same, and it is unfair to treat them the same. So it's about time in my presentation. Let's move on to question time. Is the risk of sentencing an innocent man worth it? A very small percentage of people are actually convicted improperly. Mistakes are impossible to avoid but possible to minimize. There's never not a risk of wrongfully convicting someone. Is a woman getting hanged different from a man getting hanged? In the past of Canada, females were very rarely sentenced to capital punishment. It was met with controversy, but ultimately they are the same. There was a case of a woman in Alberta confessing to a murder because she has expected a more lenient punishment since she was a woman. She was hanged in the end. What slowly made capital punishment such a controversial topic? Some factors that make capital punishment a more controversial topic was the Charter of Human Rights that was implemented in the last century. Capital punishment in the past has also been a way to suppress minorities and the lesser fortunate people of society. Was the abolition of capital punishment good for Canada? It can be argued both ways. We cannot know for sure, but capital punishment was voted to be outlawed in Canada. Is there any crimes that can be ultimately deserving of capital punishment? Usually capital punishment is saved for crimes like murder, treason, war crimes, and other heinous crimes. Is capital punishment unethical? Capital punishment would be an extremely unethical punishment for regular crimes. In the past, capital punishment was very quick to be served and extremely unethical. In today's world, capital punishment is saved for heinous crimes and are almost always painless and a quick death. Does capital punishment infringe on the rights of humans? Technically, capital punishment does in fact infringe on the right of life. On the Charter of Rights states that everyone, no matter who they are and what they have done, has a right of life. On what side of the political spectrum does capital punishment fit into? Like the name, capital punishment is more on the capitalistic side of the spectrum, or on the right side of the spectrum. Does capital punishment lower crime rates? Capital punishment acts as a deterrence to other potential criminals. It scares other criminals from doing the crime, and it acts like a way of showing society the lengths that will be taken to upkeep the law. Why should people who take away the right of life of someone else's deserve their own right of life? It is unfair. We were taught growing up to treat others the way we want to be treated. If someone cannot behave properly with someone else's right of life, they do not ultimately deserve theirs. Why were the crimes for death penalty so unreasonable in the past? In the past, death penalties were imposed for many crimes. As time went on, in many places all around the world, the regulations have gotten much more better, and some eventually even completely removed capital punishment. Is capital punishment ever justifiable? Capital punishment could be justified against some heinous criminals who show high possibilities to re-offend. In our justice system, rapists and murderers are put together with other criminals. These other criminals could just be other people who got caught up in the wrong crowd and still be stuck in the same jail with those crazy people. Is there a humane way of executing someone? There are painless ways of executing people, which could be argued as ethical. Even the old-fashioned ways minimized the amount of suffering someone would have to go through. Examples of this would be a firing squad, hanging, and an electric chair. Why was capital punishment such a common practice in the past? It was a simple and easy way of getting rid of a bad person, something enough to become common all around the world. Should capital punishment be seen more in today's world? Capital punishment under regulation and reform could potentially be a great way of dealing with heinous criminals. However, of course, capital punishment without very much regulation can become a way of oppressing minorities of society. And that just really concludes the presentation. I want you guys to take away the message Not that capital punishment is necessarily good, but capital punishment can do good under a controlled and good legal system.